Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us this 24th of December 2014. Certainly, as always, something's happening. Some news is impacting markets. And so let's dive into where we are on the S&P futures this morning. We are higher by 2 at 2081. I'm sorry, 2080.75, just downticked about a quarter point here on the S&P futures, and we're not at the high of the day. High of the day is 2081.76. Coming in a little bit here, but again, very, very tight range on the S&P futures this morning. We have crude oil, West Texas Intermediate crude lower by $1.17 at $55.95. So retracement back into that 55 handle range, 55 to 56 handle range. We have gold lower this morning by $3.20 at 1174.8. We have the 10-year at 2.291, which is interesting. Yield does seem to be climbing on the 10-year and on the 5-year, actually, folks. We have a nice tick up in the yield on the 5-year at 1.776, which is considerable. We have about a 0.25% move up from about a week ago, which is rather interesting. We have the dollar index at 89.915, lower by 0.154. Now remember, the dollar does impact the oil and gold pricing. So the euro is at 1.2209, and that's where we are heading into the open, which is approximately in about 28 minutes or so. So let's dive into yesterday's trading day a bit. Let's dissect that just slightly. We really had a 10 handle range for the trading day. Overall muted volatility. Muted volatility. We did have the S&P 500 finish higher by 0.17% at 2082.17. We did have the Dow Jones make a new high, a record high yesterday at 18,024.17, higher by 0.36. NASDAQ was the only one that was lower by 0.33% at 4765.42. Remember, we did have a bit of weakness in the IBB, the biotech ETF, yesterday, so that it certainly has impacted the NASDAQ, and that's something to we want to keep an eye on this morning as well. So the other piece is certainly keep in mind, this is the holiday week, folks. Trading is open until 1 p.m. today. We'll take a look at the economic calendar for a shortened day, a plethora of activity this morning. So it's going to feel a little cramped with a mix of lighter volume. So it's actually going to feel like a slightly strange trading day because you have less participants, but at the same time, you may have, from the macroeconomic perspective, the government still has to report their news flow. So it is going to feel a bit odd there, but at the same time, you don't want to overtrade things, and that's something that Milton and I talked about yesterday. Especially in that subdued volatility, you may not have that follow through in those moves that you may be looking for, because again, not everyone is involved in the markets this week and next week. So again, not saying not to trade, but again, keep an eye on volatility. You're looking at possibly subdued continuation of subdued volatility here. Certainly in focus is the oil prices and its effect on individual countries. One thing that we're keeping an eye on over the next few days is really any specific news that will come out of OPEC, maybe a statement by the Saudi ministers, maybe other countries commenting on oil. And what's interesting, and Milton and I were just Milton and I were just commenting that about a month and a half ago or so, even during the OPEC meeting over Thanksgiving holiday, and the fact that they did not reduce production, and I'll have Milt chime in on this as well. We were very out in front in this, and we were saying that basically it's game theory. And when game theory is, when you're involving game theory with respect to, you're always looking at what the other person will do, and so you're estimating or guesstimating, if you will, the probabilities and what that other party will do in response to your actions. So that's what, in a nutshell, game theory is. And there's an interesting article that was published in the Wall Street Journal, but I have to, Milt, I think we have to take a little credit for that. I think we were out in front on that some time ago, and just now folks are talking about that. So one of the things that we want to get into this morning is the activity. Certainly, U.S. jobless claims fell 9,000 last week to 280,000. Continuing claims 2.40 versus 2.38, 2.40 million versus 2.38 million estimated. So a little bit higher on the continuing claims. A little bit of less by 9,000 on the initial jobless claims, and the prior was revised from 2.37 million to 2.38 million. At 9:45, we are waiting for the Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index. 10:30 is the EIA petroleum status. 11:30 we're having some Treasury auction results. And at 12 p.m. we're having the EIA natural gas report. So you have a culmination of two really important reports coming out with respect to energy, and we know that natural gas has been on a precipitous decline recently. We're currently at natural gas at 3.122. I'm sorry, 3.123 on natural gas futures. And remember, we close at 1, so you'll have the opening rotation, from 9:30 till about 10:30. Once you get into that, we'll get into the 10:30 numbers. Get into that 11 o'clock time, folks. You're going to see a real decrease in volume, and we'll see how that 12 o'clock natural gas report impacts the lower volume day. We also wanted just to kind of briefly, we brought this up yesterday. Remember, there's a China-Russia relationship that's been forming. Always, they've historically, if you look back even at Soviet times, in certainly Russian Soviet Union times, certainly China being on the communist side, certainly there's always been a relationship, but certainly with the sanctions in place by the West, Russia certainly turned to China rather quickly, and we mentioned that even some months back, and that's exactly what they were doing. China is seemingly the lender of last resort, with the IMF always has been, and that's where China comes in now. A couple of things that we want to throw out, and this is something that the street is now really looking at into 2015, and what's on the mind of traders and investors and institutionals, whether retail or professional. This is what's really on the minds, and this is not just a something you want to think about just this morning, but something that you want to think about going forward. And this really happens every single year, and so really what you're looking at is what are the FOMC decisions? What are the ECB actions going into 2015. We know that January will be a big month for the ECB, and directionally speaking, what's going to come out of Draghi in terms of commentary? What's the relationship between Draghi and Germany? Remember, Germany has a different economic theory with respect to monetary policy and spending, a little bit more fiscally responsible on the German side. Also, oil is continuing to be a big story coming into 2015. How will Russia and Ukraine, will there be some kind of resolution, or are we just going to maintain this seemingly odd situation just between a little bit of fighting, but yet the world has now understood that there's not much they can do or want to do with respect, in terms of roiling the markets. What's the relationship between Russia and China? Also, any more commentary out of OPEC, non-OPEC nations, and also what's coming out of the macro economy globally? We know that there's been a slowdown both in the European nations and in China. Although, can the U.S. decouple, at least from a macroeconomic perspective, from the rest of the world in terms of slowdown? And that's something that we're keeping an eye on rather closely. So before we get into the overnight markets and what Europe is doing now, and then we'll get into the specific stocks, like to bring in Milton, his thoughts on technical analysis, where we are. We know it's a shortened day. Even Friday is going to be, our feeling Friday is going to be volume is just going to be anemic. Milton, what are you looking for in 2015? Give us, let's say, for the rest of the year. Will be relatively anemic volume, slightly less volatility. What specific levels are you looking at going out? Let's go long term a little bit. What's on your mind?
Well, sorry to burst your bubble, George, but I'm not really a big long term kind of guy.
Okay.
I'm like I said, I technically, you're looking at, all-time highs. At this point, who really knows where the market could go? I believe that, there was some commentary yesterday on CNBC by David Tapper, who was mentioning the fact that, next year could be a year of 1999, where you have that extreme overpricing of, equities. Could it happen? Easily. I think we are overpriced at these levels, but that's just my opinion. Next year, who really knows? I think the first few weeks in January will give you a clearer dictation of what the year is going to be like. If it's going to be a volatile first few weeks, I think we're going to see a very volatile year 2015 in the markets. When the first 2 weeks comes, George, you can ask me that question again and I'll have a better feel. But right now, honestly, who really knows? Who knows what's going to happen next week? And whoever, you always have these people coming out there giving you the top picks and their ideas of their, the future moves in the markets. How do they know? Do they have a crystal ball that they go home to every night, do the little mumbo jumbo, and come out with a top pick of 2015 or a move in the markets that they believe is going to happen? I really don't know. I think that, we get a better feel initially the first few weeks in January. So after that, I'll get a better assessment on what I believe will happen or what could possibly happen in the year 2015. But right now, it's anybody's, anybody. I can flip a coin in the air or throw a dart at a paper and figure out exactly what's going to happen. I really do not know. Sorry, George. I can't give you a good feel on that. Even though it is a holiday, I wanted to give you a nice Christmas present, but I can't give you an answer to what's going to happen in 2015.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But let me just throw some tech out there for you guys.
Sure.
It's gonna be a dead day. It should be a dead day.
Right.
Volume should be nowhere to be found. Markets closed today at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You may get some volatility in the oil because we have the oil numbers coming out. API yesterday at the close showed a bigger build. That's why we're down a little bit pre-market. Let's see what happens when the real number comes out at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we can, may have a trade in oil at that point. ES, the bulls are clearly in charge. The market's at our all-time highs. Volume is not there to substantiate this move, but clearly it does not matter. Levels of interest, we're looking at the resistance is the previous highs. We mentioned it last time when it was at 2070. Now it's at the previous high right now is 2084.50. Watching those levels. Watching the support at the 2070 that was previous resistance now becomes support. That is our current support level. I don't think it's going to be one of those days where those could be tested or broken. It should be a very slow, non-eventful day today. Typically, that's what's been happening for the past 5-10 years. So let's see what happens today. Let's see what the volume is. Let's see if there's any moves. But we're looking at 2,085 to the upside, 2,070 on the downside, support for the levels on the ES. VIX back at that 14 level. Typically, at this level, you get some sort of a base and then a move back up. So many people that I've been speaking with is you're going to have this 14 number till the end of the year and then have a spike in the beginning of January. Let's see if that holds true. Like I said, that's all, well and good if you have your opinions, but typically I like to keep opinions to yourself, especially foreseeing the possible future. So right now, the VIX at the 14 level, watching and see if it could base here and could make that move that it typically does when it goes into the 14 numbers. Back up to the upside between 16 to 18. So we'll keep an eye on that. Oil, what can we say about oil again? Back to that 55 number. Every day we mention that 55 handle. It's building a base here. It's clearly building a base. The next move could be significant. If that 53.60 number is broken to the downside, I believe we could see 40s. A break above that level, we could see back into the mid-60s, maybe even the higher 60s. So we're keeping an eye on this level, keeping an eye on this base being formed, and seeing which direction it is broken. 53.60 to the downside is the number to watch for the downside support level broken. We're looking at, give me a second, let me just throw up and get an idea. We're looking ideally at the 59 level on the upside move. If that could be broken, I think we'd go to the mid-60s. So those are the two levels we're watching and keeping a close eye on. Gold. We mentioned gold because there, a lot of people trade gold. A lot of people see it as a safety net. Right now, it's in the tradable range, 1150, 1200. We mentioned the 1200 number. It broke that support back to 1174 this morning. We're keeping an eye. It could hit that 1150 support. We're looking at a positive. If it breaks below that previous low of 1170, we could see a retest of that 1150 number. If it breaks above the high of 1185, 1182 to 85, we could see a retest of the 1200. But as of now, it is breaking lower. It's at 1173.70, down about $4.40 this morning. Keeping an eye on oil, keeping an eye on gold, keeping an eye on the VIX, watching the ES. Should be a dead day. Nothing really should be happening today. And in all honesty, it should be dead going into the end of the year. Unless something bad happens, unless something good happens, it should be one of those volumeless moves to the end of the year, and then the games begin in January. That's it for me. Happy holidays, everybody. Have a great one. Have a great day off. Keep in mind we're closed at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the week. We'll be here back on Friday. That's for me. We'll pass it back to George.
Thanks, Milt. So, folks, there you have it. The technical analysis prep for this morning on the major indices here. We'll take a quick peek at where we are in the ES. ES is higher by 2.5 at 2081.50. We have oil lower by $1.28 at 55.85. So let's dive into where we were in overnight trading. We'll bring back the presentation here, folks. One moment. In Asia, so Nikkei higher by 1.24%, Hang Seng higher by 0.07, and Shanghai lower by 1.98%. Remember, Shanghai, we typically do have a little more volatility out of that index than the others. So just keep that in mind as you're seeing these numbers flow through. In Europe, FTSE's higher by 0.18%. CAC and Paris lower by 0.44%. DAX in Germany higher by 0.57%. And IBEX more or less flat, higher by 0.04%. So when we talk about oil, before we get into the specific commodities, energy, and raw materials, these are the oil ETF and ETNs that we watch that help us understand. You certainly have the future prices, but what effect does that have on the individual securities, individual companies that drill for oil, and ship oil, upstream, midstream, downstream. You have the OIH, which is a huge ETF. Remember, you have one of the larger. If you take a look at Halliburton, if you take a look at Schlumberger together, they make about a third of the entire OIH ETF, and that's something really important to keep in mind as you're seeing these stocks fluctuate with oil. With oil fluctuation, and some of these ETFs and ETNs are short. Some of them are long. Some of them are 2-3 times volatility. So again, something to keep. At least put that in your watch list and see how that materializes over weeks and months. On the commodities, energy, and raw materials, let's dive into this a little bit. We have again crude oil lower by $1.32 at $55.80. On the distillates, we have gasoline lower by 0.0412 at 1.5292. We have the natural gas lower as well at 0.048 at 3.123. Heating oil lower as well this morning, 0.0392 at 1.9515. And just keep something in mind. We've had a remarkably remarkably warmer than usual December in the Northeast, and the Northeast does tend to be a rather because of the amount of the population, sheer demand for heating oil and natural gas, and Northeast, we do tend to be a little aggressive on that demand side. So we have been warmer than usual December. Just a little bit of anecdotal evidence there. On the gold, again, as Milton said, lower by $3.60 at 1174.40. Silver is 0.032 at $15.73.5. We have platinum lower by $5.20 at $1,186.50. Cocoa higher by $12. 29.78. And so let's dive into the yields here. We have the 5 yield at 1.773, folks. This is and I'm not sure why other folks are not discussing this. We feel that this is one of the larger stories here on the 5-year. At 1.773. We have a yield on the 10-year at 2.291. So we're creeping up to that 2.3 level. The 30-year at 2.877. Still a bit lower than we were a month ago, and quite a bit lower than we were about a year ago. The 2-year is at also 0.74%. So we are lower than we were a month ago on the 2-year, and certainly lower than we were a year ago on the 2 year. That yield curve is rather interesting. We'll see how that manifests itself into if there. Certainly, I'm sure the FOMC is watching that rather closely. Um, let's get into specific stocks that are making news this morning. We can get into COL. COL holder value act cuts stake to 4.2%. We're looking at the let's see, this is we're looking at not anything yet in this morning trading. Remember, we're looking at in about 5 minutes to opening in New York. SMBC holder Jacobs reports 9.2% stake. Not seeing anything yet in SMBC Southern Bancorp here. Let's see, VOLC. Gamco reports 5.86% stake in Volcano. A little bit of a pop in yesterday's later, just at the close there, up to $17.99. We'll see where that opens in the morning. Let's move into syndicates. What's making news this morning? PAYC. We have syndicates. So again, these tend to be dilutive. It has a dilutive effect for the particular security, and that is what we're going to report here. So PAYC Paycom selling 5.585 million shares of common stock for holders. PEI withdraws 1 billion mixed security shelf due to misfilings. That's rather interesting there. So we'll see if there's a Pennsylvania real estate investment. See if there's an impact on that when we open on that. PPHM selling 150 million in common stock, preferred stock. So again, not as mixed shelf as if we get convertibles and fixed income, but again, looking like a little bit of a mixed shelf on the PPHM. PERY selling 1.5 million shares of common stock for holders. Not anything yet in this morning. RCAP automatic mixed shelf. Again, mixed shelf is anything from equities, preferreds, convertibles, fixed income. A great way for companies to gain capital for R&D and various other activities. PAYC. And we had the same Paycom, and we had another selling of up to $185 million worth of shares to holders. In IPOs this morning, we have a few BKFS here. Not a couple of large IPOs here. The bigger story here is CDX files to withdraw IPO. So we'll see how that translates into the market. Interesting day to launch an IPO here. We'll pick out some of the larger insider purchases this morning. And let's see, Hawaiian Telecom, $1.3 million purchase here. Not anything yet in HCOM. We had some significant purchases in Juno, which we want to bring to your attention. Juno Therapeutics. If we take a look at, remember this was a recent IPO. So we wanted, very interesting here, rather some significant purchases here. So wanted to bring that up for you. GSAT, Globalstar, this morning possibly indicating around $2.99. Rather impressive purchase, $34 million purchase here. So again, rather impressive purchase in Globalstar. We want to bring that to your attention. Let's take a look at OH. We take a look at SCIO. We currently don't have anything yet in pre-market, about $100,000 purchase. OHAI, we have nothing yet in pre-market, again about $100,000 purchase there. Let's take a look at GLP, Global Partners. We have about a $1.3 million purchase. And we have, let's see, we have a little bit out of Sears this morning and overnight. Sears really had a kind of a negative day. Well, coming a bit of profit taking yesterday in the afternoon in Sears, about $165,000 purchase overnight. Let's see here. Mind Mitchum Industry, so we had about an $83,000 purchase in overnight. So again, nothing cataclysmic, but again, some significant purchases in the millions. We like to bring them up as we get ready for the trading day. So let's take a quick check on where we are in the markets. S&P futures higher by 150 at 2080. Certainly not at the high of the day, but we are anticipating a rather muted volatility today, muted volume, and range bound. At least that's the expectations. We'll see if these economic numbers that we're waiting on, both from the oil, from the petroleum, and the natural gas numbers, see if they have an impact on markets this morning. So, folks, thanks for listening. This has been Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. We thank you for joining. We wish you a